The first thing on your list, on your shopping list, to create this knitted headscarf, I had to remember what I was knitting. You're going to need to buy needles, and you're going to need your actual knitting needles, and you're going to need needles that you can use to finish the product off. What you do is you bind it off when you're finished, which I'll get into later, but for that you need these two needles. These two needles are called Tapestry yarn needles. They're basically like big sewing needles. The difference is these are plastic, and the hole is big enough to actually fit your yarn in, because yarn is so much thicker obviously than thread. So they come in packs of 2. They're probably about $1. Sometimes when you buy yarn, they come with the yarn. These two, for example, I think came with some yarn that I bought, some pricier yarn at some point. So these are what you're going to need, tapestry needles, to finish your product off. Okay, so that's the first thing on your shopping list. Now, for actual knitting needles, there are many, many choices of knitting needles, but the most widely used needle is a US 8 and 11 inches, and that's what this is. This is what you're going to use normally to do sweaters, to do neck scarves, to do afghans, to do almost the majority of your projects. All needles come in packs of 2. Most needles, I should say, come in packs of 2. And this is just one, and most of these will just be one because I'm using the other needle for something else. So this is your US number 8 and 11 inches. This is also a number 8, or these, I should say, are also number 8s. But these are 7 inches as opposed to being 11 inches. So they're widely used in width, which is what the US number 8 means, but not so much in length, which is the 7 inches. I use them for scarves, for the neck scarves, but that's primarily all I use them for. So they're good to have, but they're not great. Let's see. This needle, which is also 7 inches, it's a double point needle. Okay, so it has 2 points on either end, as opposed to having 1 point and 1 guard, which you use to make sure that your yarn doesn't fall off your needle. Double point needles, and this is 7 inches, but it's a number 6. It's a US 6. So it comes in a pack of 4. Okay, all 4 of these are one set, and you use these to knit circular things such as socks, hats, anything that you want a circular piece of fabric for. The other thing you can use to make circular fabric, which I'm actually using for something else, I'm making a skirt with it, are circular needles. They come in a variety of needle sizes, like an 8, like a 6, like a 5. Needle sizes go from 0 to 15, I believe. So they come in a variety of thicknesses, widths, but they are 2 little needles, probably about half the size or a little bit more of these. But they're connected by a cord, which means you can't lose your needles because they're connected. And it's great for doing circular things, such as a skirt like I'm doing, a dress. I guess you could do pants legs if you were knitting some pants, which I've never done. You could do sleeves, like if you were doing a dolman sleeve sweater, that would be good for that. The 4 pack of dual point needles were also good for sleeves. So your circular needles, I use them all the time, which is why I never have a free one, because I'm always working a few pieces of fabric on it. This thickness is actually a US number 9, so this is thicker than the 8s, but it's also longer. I don't know if you can really see how long that is. Probably not. This is 14 inches, okay? And it's single point, so it has 1 point on one end, and it has the guard on the other, but it's 9. And at 14 inches, the great thing about 14-inch needles are you can do really wide pieces of fabric. Ordinarily, the length of your needle is going to be the width of your project. So a 14-inch needle just means you can do a longer piece, a wider piece rather. Ooh. Technical difficulties. I knocked over my camera. What we're using for this project are 14 inches, just like the 9 I just showed you, except this is a US 5. This is a much thinner than a 9 and much thinner than an 8, obviously. And it's good for making thin stitches, which create a flat piece of fabric. So this is what we're using. You could go, like I said, as far as thin as a 0, but for beginner knitters especially, I think that you need something with some thickness to it. So a 5 or a 4 would be good. I'm using a 5 for this project, and I would suggest that you use a 5. You can get these needles, any of these needles, from Walmart. You can get them from Michael's, any craft store. Walmart normally sells them at a good price. These are all, each set is probably about $3 to $4. So they're not that expensive in a set, except for your double point needles. The set is 2 needles. I'm trying to see, let's see here, if I have, okay, here it is. This is for my 14-inch number 5. This is the actual label. Okay. And this label just says, you know, it's a US 5, 14 inches, and it's by the Boye brand, B-O-Y-E. Like I said, this will probably cost you $2 to $4, depending on where you get it. And that's what you need. So the first 2 things you need for this project are your 14-inch US number 5 knitter's needles and your tapestry needles. And I'm gonna put it up at the side, but just so you can get see and get a visual of what you need. Those are the 2 things that you need. The first 2 things that you need. Up next, we'll talk about yarn.